We
My
did
library
too.
card.
But we still have fun.
High school still worked.
Let's call the meeting in order, please.
Radio, yeah.
Michelle, you want to take the roll, please?
Mayor Zakowski.
Here.
Alderman Kittle.
Here.
Alderman Vries.
Here.
Alderman Weinmeier.
Here.
Alderman Montello.
Here.
Alderman Volkert.
Here.
Alderman Kraft.
Here.
Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Your motion to adopt the agenda as proposed.
Make a motion, we adopt the agenda.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So moved. Any public comments? Come up to the microphone, please.
Some of you know
Want to
who,
state your name?
Chris
address?
Milliron. Some of you know who I am and some of you don't. I grew up in this town, and on August 10th, I attended the Fire Advisory Board meeting. And at that time, because I want to know what's going on with the fire department in this city. I'm tired of everybody, this side, that side of it. I want to find out for myself what the heck's going on. So I send off an email to Sarah Reese of the HR department asking her for the discipline records of the interim fire chief, the assistant fire chief. I wanted to know who was on the fire department at this time. The interim fire chief says there's 29 people that are on the fire department. Okay, good. I want to find out who those 29 are, because I want to know if it's true that we have 29 people in our fire department. I've talked to a couple different insurance agencies, and they told me the street that appears that the city is going down, that everybody's insurance rates are going to go up. And they said mine could go up as much as $200 a year if the fire department numbers are far less than what's claimed to be. So I want to know what those numbers are. The city won't give me that information. It should fall underneath the Freedom of Information Act of who these firefighters are, when they started, when they became firefighter twos, when they became officers. That should all be able to be disclosed to anybody like me that pays taxes on that city, on the fire department. I know this is costing the city a ton of money with the city attorney bill, and if there's any lawsuits to come out of this, and that some of these town board people that I've talked to in the townships said the city says none of it's going to be put on them. I find it hard to believe that being that the townships are responsible for 49.9% of what goes on across the street, that they're not going to be on the hook for part of that money that comes, that's going to cost everybody. So, I mean, why can't I get this information? I don't know. It should be underneath the Freedom of Information Act. I worked for government for 30 years. I had to take a test every year to see what was able to be disclosed, what was private, what was confidential, all that stuff. I had to take a test every year. I know, at least in the state of Minnesota, what that information is. And what I asked for should be able to be disclosed. So I don't know why it's not.
I don't know if our city attorney wants to comment now.
But
or
wait
is
a
this
second, wait a second. Chris, I don't know anything about the information you've requested, but have you asked your town chairman who sits on the fire advisory board?
I've been going out there next Monday for the town board meeting. I've talked to several, talked to Mitchells and stuff, and they said they were informed that the township would not be responsible.
You're talking
I say
about
hogwash.
But Chris, you're talking about two different things. You want to know who's on the fire department,
Yes.
and now you want to talk about legal bills
No,
that have been
I mean,
incurred.
it's all going to come out in the end. I want to know who's on the fire department.
Okay, can we just stick with that for right now? Have you asked your town chairman who is on the fire advisory board, have you asked them that question?
I've asked Mitchells, yes.
And
They don't have that information.
Well, they absolutely have that information available to
If-
them. I don't know why you can't get it. I think that's another
City
question.
ain't gonna give it to me.
Well, but I'm asking you though, you live in Aaron Prairie,
Yep.
and Aaron Prairie has it because they have representation on the fire board. They do.
They have representation on the advisory board.
It's what we call the fire board. Okay,
Yep.
advisory board, that's good. But the point is they have access to that information.
Well, they ain't giving it out either.
Okay, well, but this isn't, and please don't take this wrong, this isn't the Aaron Prairie Town Hall meeting.
I agree.
So, I mean,
But it's the city of New Richmond, and the city of New Richmond's who?
absolutely, but I'm just saying to you, I don't know. You can answer the question relative to his question about that, but I don't know why you haven't started first to put this on your representation out in Aaron Prairie.
I asked the Mitchells, and they claim they don't have that information.
This is public comments. Are we going to go forward on this? This is his comments right now. Can he follow up later on?
He can, but Mr. Mayor, I will tell you that we did receive a records request under the open records law, and we have responded to the specific questions that Mr. Milliron has asked. If you'd like to ask for different information, we will respond to those requests as well. But under the records request requirements or obligations for city government, we're not required to create data to provide it. We are only required to determine whether there is responsive data and records, and even then, there are some prohibitions on what we can provide under state law. So originally, the request was directed to Sarah. She forwarded the request to me. We worked through it. We provided our response. The response may not have been satisfactory, but I will tell you that it was legally compliant. So if there is additional follow-up that we need to have, we can certainly have that follow-up, but there are certainly limitations under the Wisconsin Open Records Law as to what we can and will produce with respect to requests.
Training records should be underneath that, and the list should be, the city should have a compiled list of every firefighter's training already on record. So that should be able to be disclosed. That list already does exist.
I will tell you that we responded to the request as it came
Yeah,
in.
okay.
And if there are additional requests to be made, we're happy to take a look at them and process them as we're required them to do.
Anybody else for public comments? If not, do we hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Any questions on the consent agenda? Not, do we hear a motion, or I don't think we need a motion on this. Yeah. Do we need a motion on this?
I already have a motion and a second.
Okay.
There's no roll call on this one, just an
Okay.
all in favor.
Everybody approve? Say aye.
Aye.
Approved. New business. Public request for a metal detecting ordinance amendment. Or Sarah?
Good evening,
Oh,
City Council and
Katrina.
Mayor. At the Park Board meeting on August 31st, a local citizen requested a change in the city ordinance, section 62.3. Currently, it states that no person shall dig into the turf of any city-owned park or recreational property unless authorized by Common Council or Park Board. The citizen has requested permission to dig up what they find while metal detecting in a city park. In the memo, there's outline options including continue to prohibit digging unless authorized on a case-by-case basis, amend local ordinance to allow digging, establish a permit with a fee, or refer back to Park Board for recommendation in the future. The Park Board considered this at their meeting on August 31st and wishes for council feedback or action.
You know what? You had some comments from that too, I think.
Yeah, so we've had a request from local residents. So currently, again, you can use a metal detector in city parks. You just can't be digging up the actual turf looking for an object. We've discussed as staff. I think our preference would be to keep the ordinance the way it is. You know, it's easy to hit something, whether it be irrigation system, underground utilities. In some cases, we may think something is parkland, and in fact, it's actually private property. I also think it's oftentimes if a call does come in or a complaint about someone that's digging in a park, it's most likely going to fall on our police department to try to determine whether or not that person had permission to be digging or not. So I think from a staff perspective, we would prefer that digging is not allowed on city property. If they want to do that on private property, they could certainly do so with permission from the property owner. But wanted to bring it to the council to see if you wanted to proceed with any changes to this, if you wanted to refer it to the park board for their discussion. But wanted to make you aware of this request before we put a lot of staff time into it or pursuing different avenues.
I would say that most people want people digging in a park, and private property, that's fine if they get permission, but that's how I feel about it. I think we've got the ordinance already, and
I have a question. Let's say someone lost a ring and it's in the park of where they lost it. It says that they can then do some digging with permission from the park board or the city council. That's obviously going to take a few weeks for that to happen. Is there any situation where we could just simply say, yep, you lost your ring, we'll allow a little digging for that in that situation? I don't know how you monitor that, of course, but I understand the concerns about underground utilities.
Yeah, so that's a similar like the Wisconsin state parks, you're not even allowed to use a metal detector, but if in the event, like to your example, someone loses something, they know the general area, I think that's something that as staff, if we had a specific request like that come forward, we certainly would want to work with that individual. In this case, this is more of a recreational request of someone that does it more as a hobby. And, but I think, you know, there are circumstances where, you know, in the case of a ring, even in that situation, you may not have to be digging. But, you know, we don't really have a public beach or something here in Richmond where it may be covered in sand or something. But I think in an event like that, staff would most likely work with that individual, would make the park board and council aware, rather than having to wait a whole month for the next meeting.
So do we need a motion to move on from this, or can we just simply say status?
status
Like a
quo. We've got
motion
the ordinance.
to maintain status quo, probably.
You wouldn't have to take any action if,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Everybody in agreement? Action? We'll move on then. Auditor's report for 2021.
Good evening. I'm Kim Schultz, partner with Baker Tilly out of our Eau Claire office. I'm happy to be here today to just give you some highlights of the city's 2021 audit. So the first thing I'd like to just briefly go over is the independent auditor's report. This is essentially our letter that talks about your compliance with governmental audit standards and management's responsibilities, auditor's responsibilities. We have issued a clean opinion or an unmodified opinion on your financial statements, you know, as we have in the past. The opinion also goes on to describe management's responsibilities, which are for preparation of the financial statement and designing and maintaining your internal controls or your checks and balances over your finances. This year, if you compare your independent auditor's report year over year, or if you're used to looking at these, the report does look different this year, and that's due to an auditing standard change. It's not due to a change in the type of opinion you're getting. It's simply due to an audit standard changes. It elaborates the auditor's responsibilities and rearranges some of the information. So if you looked at this and thought it looked a little bit different, you know, that is the reason why you're still getting an unmodified opinion. So on the next slide, briefly goes over auditor's responsibilities to express an opinion on the financial statements, in that we are planning and doing the audit procedures to provide a reasonable level of assurance, not an absolute level of assurance that your financial statements are free of material misstatements. So on the next slide, we start going over some financial metrics. Probably the most important number in your financial statements is fund balance in your general fund. It's important to have an adequate amount of fund balance for unexpected needs, to balance a budget, to make investments in certain programs or certain things that you need to. So if we look at this chart, black is 2020 and the green lines are 2021. So the top line, your total fund balance did go down slightly, $93,000 since 2020. But if we look at the different categories of your fund balance, there are actually some very positive things, even though you did have a small total decrease. So starting at the bottom, your fund balance is in three categories based on liquidity and based on any either external or internal designations or restrictions. So your non-spendable fund balance, those are essentially dollars that are tied up in long-term. Those items are not expected to be converted to cash within a reasonable amount of time after year end to be able to pay your current obligations. So you have $365,000. Primarily that consists of advances to TIF number 6 and TIF number 10. And some delinquent taxes as well. But that amount went down quite a bit from 2020 as the TIFs have generated increment and have repaid the advances to the general fund. Your assigned fund balance, 2021, you had $590,000. Those are items that are designated for specific projects or specific purposes. The largest components of that $590,000, you have assigned $201,000 for the capital replacement fund, and you have about $105,000 of insurance proceeds on hand at the end of the year that were designated for those capital purposes. So that leaves the unassigned category, which again has no designations, is free to be utilized as needed for cash flow or other purposes that the city needs. So that number actually did increase from 2.2 million to 2.6 million. So again, your total fund balance went down slightly, but the liquidity of it has improved because of the repayment of those TIF advances primarily. And on the next page, I have a comparison of your actual expenditures and revenues to your budget. In the middle column, you did have a final budget to use $262,000 of fund balance, but you only used 93. So you did have some better results than you had planned per your budget. Your revenues were really right on, within $6,000 in total. So pretty much perfect. And your expenses were within 2%. So you were just slightly, under budget, but again, within 2%. There were no, big outliers. I think the largest area of underspending was in the police, primarily wages and related benefits. That was about $105,000. But all the other departments had, small variances. So very, very close to budget. And then one last slide about fund balance, again, to look at the adequacy of that fund balance that we talked about earlier. A few things on this graph. The green line is the City of New Richmond's fund balance as a percentage of revenue. So you can see that has trended up pretty sharply the last few years. The orange line at the bottom is the Government Finance Officers Association, their minimum recommendation. So that is at 2 months. They like you to have 17% unrestricted fund balance compared to your annual revenues, or basically 2 months of revenues on hand. The blue dots, those are Baker Tilly municipal clients of similar size in Wisconsin. So that's sort of the average of what we see in our clients statewide. So with New Richmond 2021, you have 46%. So that means that you have about 5.5 months of unrestricted fund balance, on hand. So that by, I would say, any measure is a nice, healthy number. Certainly is not too high that I think it would raise any questions. I think it's just a really solid, that's right in the range that I think we, would like to see. And again, real comparable to the kind of the typical client of your size. Last year, you were like right on kind of the average of what we see. So I think these numbers look really good. And then just a little information on your general obligation debt. You are limited to 5% of your equalized value for your GO borrowing. That is represented by the black line. So your limit was just over 51 million for 2021, and your actual GO debt is on the green line, and that's been pretty steady, trending down, just slightly. So with the $16.4 million, you're utilizing 32% of your total, which has been very, very consistent. I think was 33% last year. That does not include the revenue debt. I've listed that on the bottom of the page, 6.7 million. That is secured by your revenue streams from your utilities, so not included in these numbers. And then on the next page, this is a look at just the governmental fund debt. So this excludes any GO borrowing or any revenue bonds that you have in the utility funds. This is looking at your debt service expense, your principal and interest, as a percentage of your budget, essentially, of your total non-capital expenditures. So you had 2.6 million of debt service expenditures in the governmental funds, and about 11.3 million of total non-capital expenditures. So that puts you at 23.3%. That is down slightly, which is a positive thing. The lower the number, in this case, the better. Down from 26% last year, but that number has been just slowly trending down, which is great. 20% is really an ideal number that we like to see. I think communities that have a lot of growth, a lot of activity in TIF districts, and a lot of related GO borrowing for TIF districts do struggle to get down to that 20% level. But I think this trend you have in the 23%, I think given all the borrowing that you have that will be paid by increment versus just your general tax dollars, I think this is a strong metric for the city. So just to summarize, I think all the metrics that we tend to highlight, I think they all really looked very strong. Your fund balance, though it's down, it's more liquid than it has been. Those TIFs are generating increment and paying down those advances. Your debt metrics are just where we'd like to see, as well as your fund balance percentage of your revenues. So,
Questions from any of the council? Report.
okay, if I could just thank city staff for all the help. Getting through an audit is a big process, so I appreciate their cooperation, their flexibility, and the help that they gave us getting everything ready.
What you're saying, our city's in good shape.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item is debt management policy. Brianne?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. In your packet is a draft for debt management policy. Over the last couple of meetings, we've spoken about the capital budget process, and a large component of capital projects is debt issuance. And so with that, the city has had structure in place to from benchmark aspects of things of how we evaluate debt and make those recommendations, but we have not formally memorialized that in a written policy. So the policy that's in your packet for tonight just really talks through best practices in regards to debt management, compliance with our covenants that are after debt is issued, how we would look through and compare relative benchmarks. So Kim this evening went over a few benchmarks of how we look at debt, but there's some additional ones as well. And so this policy really goes through the types of debt, how we would structure amortizations. We talk about useful life within there as well, and pairing that with the correct financing mechanism to deliver that. So again, this is a first reading. So really the intent, if there's any questions from council this evening, I'd be happy to address those. Otherwise, we would bring this back during the October regular meeting for action. And just so everyone is aware too, Nick Vivian, our attorney, has reviewed it, has not provided any additional comments on it. Still is in review from our financial consultant, Ellers. They've done an initial review. with no changes at this point in time, so.
Any questions for Rayanne right now? This is the first reading, so if you have questions in between, get a hold of Rayanne. Thank you. Next item is stormwater utility rate study.
I have this one as well. So earlier this summer, staff made a recommendation to council, and council approved the issuance of RFP to conduct and update our stormwater utility rates. So our last study was conducted when the stormwater utility was actually put into place. And so on every 5 to 8 years, it's best practice to review those rates and to ensure that we are charging the correct rate structure to cover our expenses as well as future capital projects. So proposals were received in August and were reviewed by staff. Based upon those evaluations, we had further discussion internally and are recommending to council to actually delay the study being conducted by a third party at this point in time to allow us to finish our MS4 compliance so we have a good understanding of the projects that will be required. So then having that conducted, we would then bring that, once that's conducted, to then do an external study to look at our rate structures and proposed rate changes. So we just feel like it would be better timing to allow that design and planning aspect to come before we make some major changes to the rates that might just change after we do the MS4 compliance. So what we do recommend is an internal review that's conducted by finance of the current rate structures or the classifications of those rates, and we would bring forward a recommendation to council at the later in fourth quarter.
We have a motion now to reject the bids.
So that is what we are seeking tonight, or recommending that you would reject the bids.
Reject the bids at this time.
I'll make a motion to reject bids. Request for proposals to conduct a stormwater utility rate study.
Second.
I'll second it.
Alderman Kittle?
Yes.
Alderman Vries?
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier?
Yes.
Alderman Montello?
Yes.
Alderman Volkert?
Yes.
Alderman Kraft?
Yes.
Motion passes. Next item is electric line worker apprentice program. Noah?
Yeah, so this was an item that was discussed last week by the Utility Commission. It's been several years since we've had an apprentice line worker brought on to our electric department, but it is pretty common that most utilities will cover the cost of their tuition and their textbooks as they go through the apprentice program. It's typically a 3 to 4 year program through Chippewa Valley Technical College. And so included in the packet is an agreement that the apprentice line worker that would enter into with the city, in the event that they didn't complete the program, they would have to pay back a prorated amount. So that way, if we bring them on board 2 years from now, halfway through the program, they leave employment, take a job somewhere else, they would then have to pay us back a portion of that tuition cost. But the Utility Commission discussed this at their meeting. They were supportive of approving the apprentice program language that's identified in the agenda packet. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
While going to school?
Yes, so this would be, they're primarily working 40 hours a week with the city. I think they'd go for like 1 week in the fall, 1 week in the spring for classes. So pretty limited basis. Very different than, say, like the police academy, where they're going for several weeks before they can do any work for us at all. So they gradually, as they go through the program, take on more and more responsibility as they work up to that journeyman certification.
We're looking for a motion to approve the electric line worker apprenticeship program.
So move.
I'll second that.
Further discussion from the board? Michelle, you want to take the roll, please?
Alderman Vries.
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier.
Yes.
Alderman Montello.
Yes.
Alderman Volkert. Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle.
Yes. Motion passes. Next item is line worker apprentice position.
This item was also discussed by the Utility Commission recently. Earlier this year, the City Council and Utility Commission had approved proceeding with the hiring for either an apprentice or a journeyman line worker due to the growth in the community as we look at future staffing needs for the electric department. Again, this position is funded solely through the electric department's budget. We had budgeted for 2022 for a journeyman line worker. This would be a more experienced individual, and also from a benefit side, most likely someone that could potentially be either an employee plus one or a family plan. As in, not unique to Richmond, there aren't a lot of journeyman line workers that are available in the market, but we did have a lot of interest in high-quality candidates looking at that apprentice level position. Typically, these are individuals that are 20 to 22 years old looking to go into this profession. As we look at succession planning in our electric department, we have a very veteran group. And as we look at it, takes 3 to 4 years just for them to reach that journeyman certification level. We wanted to look at, does it make sense to actually bring on 2 apprentices rather than just the one? We looked at the budget impact. We also wanted to look at not just salaries and benefits, but what does that mean for working out in the field? Does it mean we need another truck or more equipment or anything like that? And really it would go from work for our staff. There really isn't an impact on trucks or equipment. Really, they're going to go from working on from a 2-person crew to a 3-person crew. And again, early on, they're going to be kind of learning the ropes, taking on more and more responsibility, shadowing some of those more veteran employees. So in terms of the actual dollar amount, is a net increase of $20,000 to $25,000 for the operating budget for the electric department, which we felt was very worthwhile looking at long-term growth in the community. And again, just from that succession planning standpoint, to have a couple of interested individuals that we thought did an exceptional job. I have ties to the local area and want to go into this line of work, when oftentimes today, not only do you have fewer people going into electrical work, plumbing work, but let alone who want to be a high voltage line worker. So we were very pleased with both the quality and quantity of the applicants that we received, and I really felt it was a good opportunity to look at bringing on 2. So the Utility Commission recommended proceeding with the hiring of 2 apprentices. We did want to bring this forward to the City Council this evening for final approval. I'm happy to answer any questions, and Alderman Vries serves on the Utility Commission as well if you have any questions for him.
I just want to say it's shocking to me.
Oh. I'd make a motion to approve the second apprentice line worker for the electric department.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Not Michelle, you want to take the roll, please?
Alderman Weinmeier.
Yes.
Alderman Montello.
Yes.
Alderman Volkert. Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle.
Yes.
Alderman Vries.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next item, E.O. Johnson, Locknet contract renewal.
Good evening, Mayor and Council again. Historically, the city has always contracted with a third-party IT provider to help monitor and manage our network system, as well as provide individual PC support. In 2017, we sought competitive bids for this service, and as a result, E.O. Johnson Locknet was awarded a 5-year contract. The contract will expire at the end of this year, and therefore, staff has initiated conversations with E.O. Johnson to look at a renewal contract, which is in your packet this evening. We do feel strongly that E.O. Johnson has provided the city a very high level of service and the vital knowledge to ensure security of our network, and provide the day-to-day support to PC users as well. And so with that, in the renewal contract, the monthly cost of service is identified as $6,800 per month or $81,600 annually. This cost is shared equally between the general fund and utility funds. And there is an escalation clause within the contract that annual price increases are limited to 3%. Given the current environment that IT is also experiencing with supply chain and retention of their staff, there is an additional caveat in the language that should they have additional increases from their third-party service providers, so those that are providing like the monitoring software that goes over our network, those types of things, if they have a increase that's more than 3%, it would allow EO Johnson to approach the city and open up conversations in regards to what that fee structure would look like. And then it would be up to the city to accept essentially any type of price increase if it can be substantiated above the 3%, but no more than 6%. That makes sense. So staff is recommending renewal with EO Johnson. This contract is a term of 3 years. And again, would be at $6,800 monthly or $81,600 annually.
Questions on that?
I do. Any reason we went from a 5-year to a 3-year contract?
It's their recommendation. They're just having so much volatility in their pricing structure with some of these other providers and suppliers. With the current environment that they're in, they are looking to do a shorter term in hopes that some of that starts to stabilize. Otherwise, with a longer 5-year contract, we would have seen higher annualized year-over-year increases just because they don't know what that environment in that longer term would look like.
Like about a 30% increase over what we were paying previously?
It is let me do the math quick. I don't know the exact percentage, Pete, but give me.
Approximately, I'm not.
It's a 10.8% increase. Correct.
Possibility to get another year out of them.
Well, we initially negotiated down the price escalator already. In the caveat language, I did not ask for an additional term of a year. We can see what they would come back for.
Wouldn't hurt to ask, even with the same.
Yeah. We can certainly do that. Would you, are you looking for us to bring that back then, Mike, at a future meeting, or?
I'll offer a motion that we approve this as you've presented it. Ask that you ask EO Johnson if they would consider it based on the same terms.
We can do that.
Second.
Michelle, take the roll.
Alderman Montello?
Yes.
Alderman Volkert?
Yes.
Alderman Kraft?
Yes.
Alderman Kittle? Alderman Vries?
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier?
Yes.
Motion passes. EO Johnson Managed Print Services Contract Renewal.
Similar to the Locknet service contract renewal in the same time period, 2017, prior to that, we had a mix of purchased copy and print equipment and a mix of leased equipment. And throughout the city, we had a very mismatched equipment that we were maintaining and managing. And so in 2017, we did put an ERP or an RFP out to do a managed print services contract, and through that process, EO Johnson was awarded that contract as well for a 5-year contract. This contract also expires at the end of this year, and as such, we opened up discussions with the print service side of things for a contract renewal, which is in your packet this evening. And underneath this renewal, this one would be a 5-year contract. The base price of service would be $1,583.42 monthly. When we factor in the projected number of copies that we're averaging, the monthly cost would be anticipated to be $1,759.34. The monthly expense of that lease includes the copiers, printers, equipment repairs, maintenance, toner, and installation of equipment. As I mentioned, this one is a 5-year contract, and there is an escalation clause in this, but only in regards to the service component, which is a very small segment of that. You can see in the table that is on the screen above, the annualized change between year 1 and 2 would be $463, and then $509 and $560, because again, that escalation clause is only on the maintenance portion of the contract. Correct.
How does this compare to what you've been?
We currently have been paying roughly the $1,700 per month on this. Correct. And part of that, why it's not changing too, is because the number of our copies has dramatically decreased. So with the implementation of our new software, we're doing much less copying. And so we're seeing some of that cost savings come through on the actual print copies. The equipment expense has increased slightly, but we've been able to essentially manage both of those components to keep a pretty even rate.
Opportunities to make. I don't know. I'm asking.
Yeah, I think there's always opportunity there. We've certainly seen a dramatic decrease with going to the new software, about a 50% reduction in printing already. So I think as we continue to roll out different components of the software, we'll see that even come down farther to the point that we'd be able to be completely paperless or copy-free. That might be a bit of a struggle, but I think that we certainly have made good progress over the last 5 years and certainly over the last 2 years.
Copy tradition here at Richmond.
I'd make a motion to authorize the renewal of the E.O. Johnson Management Services.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Roll, Michelle.
Alderman Volkert.
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle.
Yes.
Alderman Vries.
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier.
Yes.
Alderman Montello.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next item, design services for library building project. Noel?
So if you recall, last fall, following a competitive RFP process, we had joint interviews and approved proceeding working with the 360 Real Estate Solutions, along with their team, ISG and Matera. Working with the school board, we updated the master plan for the library site to allow a mixed-use library. We had some initial public engagement meetings with the community to solicit feedback, to show some concepts for what the site could look like. And over the last few months, we've been working closely with Ellers more on the financial side of the project, looking at what might this project cost us, how long would the financing look like for a project like this. And we're kind of at a stage now where in order to proceed forward with the project, looking at schematic designs to really get a better understanding of what the library space would look like, feel like, how it would function, as well as to get more detailed cost estimates. We would have to incur some costs. So far to date, working with 360, we have not spent any resources in terms of paying them to come to public meetings or any of the concepts that you've seen so far to date. But to really get more detailed cost estimates on the project, there's a lot of variables obviously with the project. How are you heating and cooling that building? What's the floor plan actually going to look like? So far to date, we've really just kind of been going off of a ballpark estimate, just kind of on a per square foot basis. And so ISG has prepared a proposal. It's included in your packet. Their scope of services would include a developed floor plan, conceptual reflected ceiling plan. So this is looking at kind of a mirror vision of what's on the ceilings. This could be sprinkler heads, this could be HVAC attachments, lighting. exterior building elevations, interior and exterior renderings for the facility. We'd also be able to use those for additional public engagement to hear what the community would like to see the library look and feel like, to ensure that it's a gathering space for the community. Preliminary interior finish plans. So again, a lot of variables that have an impact on the cost. Is this going to be a carpeted library, hardwood floor, tile floor, polished concrete? You know, what are we looking at? All those things have a huge impact on the cost. Preliminary structural framing plan. Further developed plan to understand how the guest entry, book drop-off, and delivery would work. The narratives for HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and technology systems, and then more detailed cost estimates. And so really after this phase of the project, your building plans are about 30% complete. As part of this work, we would have additional public engagement, as I mentioned. We would see this over the fall, perhaps going out as part of the parent-teacher conferences in late October. A lot of elementary schools will have a book fair at the time, having a booth there for the library project as well as for the library if kids want to sign up for a library card. And I'm trying to reach some of the parents of younger families who, so far to date, we haven't had a lot of those folks represented at a lot of our public meetings. Again, it's difficult to get people to come out on a weeknight in the evening when they get home from work and have other things going on. But in terms of the project timeline, this project phase would be an estimated 6 to 8 weeks. Again, ISG would have representatives who would meet with library staff, library board. We've had some additional public engagement, and hopefully give the public a better idea of what the library would look like, how it would function, and as well as the cost. Sort of look at those initial estimates we've worked on with Ellers, but to see again, are those higher, are they less? And really help all of you make a more informed decision as well for the project. That's also going to help us address some of the questions we've received from the community about, what's the impact going to be on taxes? What's the cost of the building going to be? How are you going to pay for it? Depending on, and we want to be able to give as much detailed, accurate information as we possibly can. We did have an opportunity last week, and we'll have another opportunity later this month for anyone on the council who would like to see some of the properties that 360 has built and manages. I had an opportunity last week to go there with Monica Lavold, our library director, as well as Mayor Zakowski and Councilmember Montello, and looking at having another date later this month to go to view one of their properties in River Falls. So tentatively looking at September 22nd for anyone on the council who'd like to, a little shorter trip, obviously, otherwise going to La Crosse is kind of all day type of deal. But happy to answer any questions you might have about the proposal from ISG, and if Mayor Zakowski or Alderman Montello would like to speak to anything that you saw last week on our visit there, the floor is yours.
Well, I was really impressed. We went to 6 of their sites down there, and cleanliness, the buildings were in top-notch shape. And I made a comment, when you're in an apartment building, if you walk down the hallways and the carpeting is dirty, at these spots, none of those 6 buildings, some are 3 or 4 years old, but they all have their own managers, in-house managers, the buildings. And the other good thing is they own their own buildings. So they build them, they manage them. And I was really impressed with the staff, the planning and all that type of thing. It was very impressive. Monica,
Sure. I didn't know you were going to put me on the spot. I think I was looking at it from a very different point of view than the rest of you, because my thoughts were about operational. How do I run a library on the same site as residences? And this was a really great way to really start thinking about some of the things that we will have to face going forward. And so I think what impressed me was some of the foresight that this team has put into things like sharing resources. For example, libraries believe in open access and free Wi-Fi. How do you then create a building which has internet access and Wi-Fi free and available for anyone using the library, but still provide internet to people who are renting apartments without that coming into conflict with each other. And the team impressed me with willingness to address these problems in a variety of ways. And just on the fly, they offered 3 or 4 different options, which I felt very good about from going forward operationally, that they were really willing to listen to where we were coming from and think about the impacts that this was going to have. So my focus on this whole trip is really, how do we make this about the library? How do we center the library in this? And I feel like we can do this with this team.
I echo those comments, and I'm going to offer a motion because we can't move forward in this discussion unless we start getting pen to paper. And we've done all the work and the appropriate steps, and we can't go any farther unless we have start to have those hard discussions about what's the building going to look like, what are the costs going to be, usability, all of that thing. So I'm going to offer a motion that we approve the design services contract with ISG, and this is phase 1 in the dollar amount of $60,000 as presented.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? I'll make one comment. This is coming from impact fees, which we have already. So it's not coming basically from the impact fees, which we have to spend. Otherwise, we have to give them back. So this is a good resource. Community will find out how much this library is really going to cost. Further discussion? Not, take the roll, please.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Vries,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes?
Alderman Volkert.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next item is proposed rezoning of 421 South Green Avenue.
Good evening again. City staff is proposing a rezone of the parcel at 421 South Green Avenue, which will be the home to the new future library building. The application was reviewed by the Development Review Committee, and a public hearing took place on Tuesday, September 6th, where Plan Commission recommended approval of the proposed rezone, and there were no public comments at the public hearing. The site is currently zoned Z5 Traditional Neighborhood, and we are proposing to rezone it to Z6 Central Business District. As the city grows, it is logical that with it, the Central Business District would expand as well. It's timely to consider a rezone of this parcel so that the future library site can be developed with the future growth of the city in mind. The future land use map guides this parcel for institutional uses, which would include a library. Both zoning districts allow for a mixed-use library, but the zoning designation of Z6 would grant for more flexible lot occupancy requirements as the architects and engineers design the future library building. City staff and Plan Commission recommend amending the zoning map for the subject site from Z5 to Z6 through Ordinance 585.
I think it's interesting, no public comment, no input, right?
Right.
You're just not looking in the right place.
I was going to say.
Go to word of mouth. You'll see some public comment. And one comment that caught my eye was that the city is trying to do this so then they can do whatever they want.
Yes.
And I think it's a great point. The zoning designation that we're looking for, Z6, is the same zoning designation as existing institutional uses, the post office and City Hall. So I'm going to offer a motion that we approve the request to rezone this property to Z6. Yeah, sorry.
585.
That's what I meant. Where did it go here?
Ordinance
Through ordinance,
585.
Oh, yeah, approve. Do we have to suspend the rules? Ordinance? Okay, and to approve ordinance 585.
Second?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Not, Michelle, take the roll, please.
Just one second. I think one of the things that will be really important is for the city to take some time to communicate kind of what this means. As Mike mentioned, there was some considerable commentary on the New Richmond word of mouth page regarding the rezoning and the city's intent for the rezoning. And I think it will be important to set the record straight, that what is the purpose, what are some facilities that have the similar designation, what we're hoping to accomplish. There seem to be significant, I say significant, it isn't significant when you think of the proportion of the population that actually responded, but a number of people that were really uncomfortable with the idea of adding like that dense housing in terms of apartment complexes and stuff. So I just think it would be a really good idea to make sure that we're communicating in multiple ways. The start of the conversation actually was somebody put a copy of the letter that they received as somebody who lives in the area of that site. So, and just had said, you know, I'm ill-informed. I don't have all of the information. What are the community's thoughts on this? So I think we need to get ahead of some of that and communicate that as much as we possibly can.
There, that letter was sent out in advance of the planning commission.
Correct, and which nobody attended, and there was
Yeah,
no
right.
public comment.
Mhm.
I was led to believe from what we were seeing that, wow, this is gonna be a really full meeting, but
Right.
there, yeah.
And I think you're also right that there are legitimate concerns because of the unknown, and this is something very different, although, again, the point in the memo about you couldn't rebuild that middle school that was there under our current zoning designation. That building only was there. So it was only there for about 100 years. I'm sorry, it was like 90 years, but, so anyhow, but I think, Carrie, you're absolutely right. Just the city continues to make sure we get the message out and to do everything we can to engage the public, and specifically for those folks who live in the neighborhood, but for everybody, to try to get them down here and get input.
Other questions? Roll, Michelle?
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Vries,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
Motion passes. Avondale, final plat application.
Yep, Parkland first, please.
Oh, okay, parkland dedication.
Okay. As part of the Avondale final plat of their first phase of development, city staff and park board are looking to accept parkland dedication of Outlot 1, which is 8 acres on the west part of the Avondale subdivision. The 8 acres satisfy the parkland dedication in lieu of fees. The land would connect Paperjack Greenway and Paperjack Nature Way, which is essential for the future connectivity of our trail system. The proposed outlot will include a paved trail from Blue Jay Trail to County Road Double G. City staff and park board are looking for a motion to accept this parkland dedication.
I'll offer a motion that we approve this Outlot 1, am I saying it right?
Yep.
Yeah, to be dedicated as parkland of the city of New Richmond in lieu of fees.
I'll second.
Further discussion?
Alderman Vries,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello, Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle.
Yes.
Motion passes. Avondale final plat application.
Overing Homes LLC has applied for the final plat of their first phase of the Avondale development. This final plat is subject to the review of the DRC and final action of the City Council. The preliminary plat was approved in March of 2022. Since then, they have made minor changes to their first phase, adding more single-family homes instead of as many twin homes. The first phase now consists of 42 dwellings, consisting of 30 twin homes and 12 single-family homes. Per the request of Plan Commission and Council in March, special attention has been made to increase the visibility and awareness of the trail crossing on Martin Court through additional street lighting and signs. A landscaping plan has been submitted to focus on screening the new development per our request in March as well. The DRC recommends approval of the final plat for Avondale with the conditions listed in the memo.
I'll offer a motion that we approve this final plat for Avondale with the requirements that are spelled out. And I'm just trying to look at the number here. Is it 7?
I believe so. There were some updates from this morning. Loading.
They did submit the landscaping plan today, so that condition will be taken out. City staff did approve that as of today. We got all the information for the development agreement, and the costs for landscaping along with the development agreement will be on the next city council's agenda for approval also.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that update went through, but there are 7.
Yeah, with the 7
Yep.
Conditions that you've presented.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
I just want to ask you, Alonzo, when are you planning, I mean, I know you've moved some dirt. When do you envision to break ground for the first home?
Can you go up here and speak?
Past couple years, I've decided, being in this business for 25 years, I'm going to sell, and I have the purchase agreement for my company as the building company. So what I'm doing is I'm now developing parcels. That's my number one gig now. I started a company called Overing Land and Capital. And so what I'm doing with this is I already sold all the twin homes to another builder. And I will be selling the other single families to another builder. So what it is Overing may be building in some of these subdivisions, some of them not. But they will have to put up the capital to buy the lots from me. So this is something not new to me. And I obviously, you guys, this is the first one I've done here, but I've been in this business with my father too since I was 11. So this is the first one in New Richmond. I want to make sure it goes very well. Obviously, one of the concerns that we had was, making sure the lots are clean and stuff like that. Well, I actually have 3 guys that work for me that will be specific to all my subdivisions, that's what they're going to do, is manage them, if you want to say. So then we don't have these issues that have been brought to our attention. And so with this said, you may not even see an Overing home in there, depending on what comes of it. But we have a huge need for builders to be able to get lots. So that's my focus now.
Is there going to be basements? And I don't even know, maybe there's slabs, but will there be, do you anticipate that construction will be started this fall?
We're hoping. We
Okay.
truly are. The guy that is going to build the twin homes, they're all going to be slab on grade, so we're really trying to push. I know we had mentioned to Beth if there's any possibility, if we can't get total to get the first lift down, if we can get building permits with gravel. I don't know if that was brought up to you guys or not, but I know that guy wants to get moving, and he's purchasing all them at one time and moving on. So, yeah, just so you guys know, that's my
So are
gig
these
now.
all going to be owner occupied, or are they going to be rentals?
No, as far as I know, they are all for sale. The guy that is doing the twins, he sells them all. The single families, I have not heard one thing about rentals. They're all single families. Now, there would be some that are going to be 4-foot basements, some that will be 8-foot basements, depending on the lots that we come out with in the grading.
You're in land development now.
That's all I'm going to do, sir. All over Minnesota, all over Wisconsin.
Thank you.
Questions for Alonzo? Not? Roll, please.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Vries.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next is Urban Reserve Area Attachment Eisen property.
In 2012, the city entered into a cooperative agreement with Star Prairie Township, known as the Star Prairie Boundary Agreement. This agreement set a boundary line, shown in red on the map before this one. That boundary line sets the control of growth in the city so that when the time comes, the city will only expand to that line. Per the agreement, it is mandatory that any property that is subdivided and then sold outside of the immediate family would be attached and become part of the city as long as it is within that red line and in the yellow on the map. The subject site we are talking about today is located at 1816 110th Street, and it is just over 2 acres. This property was subdivided last year and recently sold. This attachment is not contiguous to the city, which is acceptable per the agreement. Future land use map intends. The Plan Commission reviewed this petition on September 6th and recommends approval of the attachment through Ordinance 582.
Motion. A motion for the attachment, Eisen property?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Have a second?
I'll second that.
Pete, can you make sure that's by ordinance number, please?
582.
582.
I still second that.
Any questions? Not, Michelle, take the roll.
Alderman Montello?
Yes.
Alderman Volkert?
Yes.
Alderman Kraft?
Yes.
Alderman Kittle?
Yes.
Alderman Freeze?
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier?
Yes.
Next item is amendments to section 121 through 52 parking and loading.
Council, I hope to group these next two together in discussion, but have two separate motions. The last major update to the zoning ordinance was done in 2015. Since then, city staff has found areas of the ordinance that need to be tailored to fit into our community better. Over the last couple of months, city staff has been reviewing two sections in particular, parking and loading and landscaping. The Development Review Committee has reviewed and have proposed changes that will streamline processes and make our ordinances more consistent with current standards. The Plan Commission reviewed the changes of these two sections at their public hearing on September 6th and recommends to amend section 12152 through the adoption of Ordinance 583 and section 12155 through the Ordinance 584 after the city attorney's review. If you have any questions about specific sections or reasoning behind the changes, feel free to ask. Beth and I are here to answer any questions you may have.
Actually, I'm going to direct my question to our chief of police. Based on the changes that are in here, and I don't know, chief, if they've necessarily, from an enforcement standpoint, parking and loading, unloading, do you have a sense that there's any enforcement?
I guess I don't. I haven't seen it yet, Mike. But I can certainly look it over and offer an opinion. But I would assume that Nick has looked at.
Not yet. So something I want to note, Mike, the removal of the minimum parking requirements, which I believe is probably what you're getting at, it's not just stripping us of any say over parking requirements. It's just putting the DRC basically in charge of reviewing it on a case-by-case basis. So it's not like we're just going to eliminate all parking in the city.
And I guess I wasn't even insinuating that. I was just curious to the person on the street.
Mm-hmm.
This is really more of a internal kind of the way we do things.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I understand you to say to the person, probably don't even necessarily know. That was what I was getting at, but thank you.
Other discussion? If not, Michelle, take the roll.
I need a motion first for
thought
ordinance
somebody made a motion.
583.
Somebody make the motion.
Sure, I'll make a motion for the cash ordinance changes for 583, section 1.
Do I have a second?
Second that.
Now any further discussion? Michelle, you want to take the roll now, please?
Just a quick thing on the discussion. When we get these approved, we will have Nick review these to make sure anything legal has to, if there's any changes, and we'll go ahead and make those changes if necessary. But we believe we're pretty close to on track.
Alderman Volkert?
Yes.
Alderman Kraft?
Yes.
Alderman Kittle?
Yes.
Alderman Freeze?
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier?
Yes.
Alderman Montello?
Yes.
Motion passes. Amendments to section 121 through 55 landscape standards.
Yep, so again, we reviewed these over the last couple of months and are seeking a motion to adopt Section 12155 through Ordinance 584 after the city attorney's review.
Questions? Motion.
Make a motion to approve amendments to section 12155 landscape standards, ordinance 584.
Second.
I'll second it.
Further discussion? Not, Michelle, take the roll, please.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Vries,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert.
Yes.
Motion passes.
I have a quick question on that, even though it's already passed. Who checks the ginkgo female only trees? Is that our arborist? Take care of it?
Yes, right now we don't have a certified arborist, but it would be them, so.
Noah takes care of that then.
Yeah.
All their duties.
Yeah.
Got Mr. Volkert's attention when.
He sat right up.
You're an arborist, Ron? You're an arborist?
Are
you an
you
arborist?
feeling?
Thanks for going through all these ordinances. I'm
feeling
sure
it,
this isn't
Pat?
the most exciting job, but we
It
really
actually is
appreciate
really
your-
exciting.
Okay, any
Awesome.
communication?
Yep.
Any communication miscellaneous?
Yes, absentee ballots will be here before the next council work session. So you can go to myvote.wi.gov to request yours. They'll be going out in the mail a week from Friday.
Anything
Election
else?
Season's back.
Just a reminder for the council, if you haven't turned in your strategic plan questionnaire, please do so. I do have hard copies in everyone's mailbox, and then I emailed out electronic copy too. So please get those to me yet this week if you haven't filled it out. So.
Greg?
As some of you are aware, I taught the civilian response to active shooter class a few weeks ago. Had a lot of people reach out to me after the fact and say they either didn't know about it or they were there and want somebody else to attend. Northwoods Tech has offered to sponsor me to come in and teach that class again. We're working on dates, but it will probably be sometime mid-October. So just kind of laying the foundation for that. To watch our Facebook page and the city's website. We'll have it posted on there once that date's firmed up.
Congratulations, you're a star. I saw you on the news. That's pretty cool. Ron, I mean, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Now wants attention.
Yeah.
Keith
But
wants to
But
say
Craig
something.
spoke.
At
Like,
least 2 seconds.
okay. Yeah.
He's got some communication.
I really enjoy getting the public updates from the different departments, and last month I was really happy to see that we had one from the
Any other communication miscellaneous? Not, do I hear a motion to go into closed session for state statute 19.851E? We're going to have discussion on proposed motorsports track development and firefighter complaint. Hear a motion to go into closed session.
Make a motion, we go into closed session.
Second.
Second.
Want to take the roll, Michelle, please?
Alderman Kittle, Alderman Vries,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert, Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
We're in closed session.
Want to take a 5-minute
Anybody want to
break
take a
or-
5-minute break?
Conference is no longer being recorded.
Ron does.
5-minute break?
You got two.